Wow, I love the early applause.
Yeah, just for walking out.
That's all you had to do. Just show up.
Could have been you. I don't know.
I
Guys,
beg
who
to
are you
differ.
clapping for? No.
You should obviously say Ed Helms. We're so glad you're here at Wharton.
I'm so glad to be here. Thanks to all of you for showing up. I understand exams are like now. Is that accurate? Okay. Boy, yeah.
Can you feel the anxiety?
There's a lot of fear. There's a lot of tension in this room right now. What is this room, by the way?
No one knows. We're in the museum.
Did we die? Is this a mausoleum? This is full Indiana Jones, right?
Are you going to do an impression?
No, but I just feel like we're in some kind of like an archaeology movie. You don't even know who Indiana Jones is, do you? Be honest.
4 people.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, but I'm definitely feeling it. This is the Temple of Doom.
It is. There you go.
Okay, so Ed, I'm so excited that you're here. You're basically the most popular character in my class.
What does that mean? In your class?
Well, I mean, we analyze a lot of office videos.
Oh, wow. For like how not to run a business.
Yes, and how not to interview for a job, and how not to pretend to help your coworkers, and there's a long list of Andy Bernard offenses.
Oh, that's so funny. Great. Well, I am not Andy Bernard. I mean, I play Andy Bernard, but I'm a different person than that. I hope I can convince you of that today.
Well, some of the audience questions actually are going to dig into that, but we'll get there later. Let's start with your new book. Congratulations on Snafu.
Thank you so much.
Woo! So I have a hypothesis about why you wrote this book, which is forevermore, when you screw up, you're just going to be like, but that's my thing. That's what I do.
I like that, and I hadn't thought of it, but it is. Yeah, you're right. That's my thing.
It gives you cover,
yeah.
Right?
It's like I just needed material for my book, and that's why I ran into you in this intersection and totaled your car. It's a snafu. I'm going to write about it.
7 years after the book came out.
I need material. Yes.
Yes. Material for the sequel. I love it. No, tell us what the real motivation was for writing this book. And also, I want to talk about your podcast, which has been digging into Screwups in such an interesting way.
So the origin of the book is actually the podcast. The podcast started about 3 years ago. It's also called Snafu. And it's a very deep dive. There's 3 seasons out. Season 3 just came out. Each season is 8 episodes, and it's a very deep dive into one crazy snafu from the past. Our sort of North Star with that was Radiolab. I went to college with Jad Abumrad, who created Radiolab, and have always loved his work. I think he's such a pioneer in, Radiolab started as a radio show before podcasts even existed. And then it became an incredibly popular podcast. But I was thinking a couple of years ago, like podcasts are taking over the universe, and everyone I know is doing a podcast. Most of them are interview shows, and they're great. I'm a guest on a million of those. I enjoy them. I consume them. But do I fit into this space in like a different way? Is there something fresh I can bring to it? And again, I kept thinking like Radiolab. I've always been a bit of a history nerd, someone who just loves like, I look at history as like chasing context. I just like to know why and how people thought when something crazy was going on and what led to what seemed like crazy choices throughout history. And also as a comedy person, like history is generally thought of as pretty dull. So what can I do that's funny and storytelling, deep immersive storytelling like Radiolab? And then it was just like, oh, snafus, the horrible train wrecks of history. Like they're inherently funny, most. Well, the way I've curated the podcast and the book, it's generally more funny than scary. And so, yeah, it was just that match. Like that was a very sort of like epiphany, realizing like, okay, this can be really funny. I can take these real historical stories, put my comedy top spin on it, and then again, back to the podcast, like really create an immersive, almost like a cinematic listening experience. And I'm so proud of that podcast. We have an incredible team, researchers, and we put so much work into it. I'm gonna say too much work. Like it has negatively impacted my bottom line and my movie career. But I love it. I love it so much. And then the book, like just like when you start to look into these things, there are so many, and there are so many that were so fun and funny, but they didn't really merit a full, big, giant, deep dive. And it just was like, of course, a book. This is a no-brainer. So that's how the book is structured. There's each chapter is it's broken up into decades, and then within the decade, starting in the 1950s, and then there are 4 or 5 snafus per decade.
So I want to talk about some of your favorites, but before we go there, I want to talk about you and your life and how you got to this point.
Okay.
We know you for your successes, but I can only imagine your life was full of failures for you to be so into snafus.
Never failed. Next question. By the way, I've developed this fun thing when I'm in an interview. Usually it's like if I'm like in a it's a junket for a movie or something, reporters ask crazy questions, and some of them are like incredibly invasive. And I've just started being like, pass.
And you can get away with that as a comedian, right?
Well, it's fun because the reporter, especially if they've kind of crossed a line or asked something like really invasive, they're like instantly chastened because it's like no one realizes you can do that. You can just pass on a question. Pass. And then the reporter's like, okay, next question. So
I love this.
That's my new trick. And I also recommend it in job interviews.
I was just wondering.
It's a total power move. Someone's like, tell me about yourself. Pass. And the boss is like, wow, that took a lot of guts. Or I like this person. But no, to answer your question, where do I start with my own snafus? Show business is just a festival of failure. Truly, like it is all you have to love. And then I started in stand-up comedy, which is just punishment. Truly, like it is you have in order to get anywhere with stand-up comedy, you really have to learn to love bombing and love failing and sort of see it as like just building your calluses, building your toughness as a performer. It helps a lot to find, especially in those early days, I was very lucky. I moved to New York City right out of college, and I found a cohort of people who were also super passionate about comedy, and there was this kind of funny hierarchy, almost like a college like class, like freshmen, sophomores, juniors, seniors, and the older kid, like you look up to the older kids, the ones that have been at it for a few years, a little more established, and as freshmen you come in and you're wide-eyed and terrified, and what you learn from the older kids is that love of bombing, because you're getting off after a terrible set or someone heckled you and got the best of you, and you come off stage and you're mortified and they're high-fiving you.
Congratulations, you sucked.
Yeah, no, truly. It's like that's the kind of like, strong bonds are forged in pain, right? And in shared experiences that are difficult. And there are obviously so many horrible examples of that throughout history, but comedy clubs is a fascinating little microcosm of that too.
Okay, so I want to talk about building those calluses. First, tell us about the worst stand-up bomb you ever had.
Okay, so there are so many, but probably one of the biggest ones. There was one where I got one of my first gigs. I was doing stand-up in the city a lot, but I was starting to get interest from comedy clubs around New York City. So like out on Long Island, up in Poughkeepsie, like in these weird sort of hinterlands of New York City. And there's this big comedy club out on Long Island in Levittown called Governors. And that was like Jerry Seinfeld came up through there, and a lot of big comedians routinely played there. It was a huge room, and they packed people in, and it was like a very different vibe. It's very Long Island. It's very different than New York City, different crowds. But the thing was, like, if you could play that crowd in addition to playing the cities, like, you were growing as a comedian. So I got one of my first opportunities to middle there, which means like to do the 30-minute set before the headliner. I'd never done a 30-minute set, and I didn't really have 30 minutes of like reliable material, but I had a couple hours of stuff. I just was like, is this gonna work? Anyway, I get up there right out of the gate. I'm struggling. The room is super cold and super chilly, not temperature-wise, vibe-wise, and somebody starts to heckle me, and I just threw back the lamest response, like, come on, like, who's this guy, a brain surgeon? And there's like a big laugh around him. And I'm like, that's not the response I was expecting. And this buddy's like, he is a brain surgeon. He's literally a brain surgeon. And at that point, like, I just lost. The crowd won, and the headliner got on stage. This guy Joey Starr, who was like just like monstrous killer comedian of Long Island, and he gets up there, and he just starts crushing right out of the gate. He's such a pro, and the crowd is roaring, and he goes. Like 3 minutes into his set, he goes, "You guys are amazing. I don't know what that other guy's problem was." Just like completely threw me under the bus. But I have more. I have a bigger. Do you want more?
Well, we definitely want more, but first I have questions.
Yes.
Okay. So first question is, like, do you immediately start telling people don't ever go to this neurosurgeon?
You mean, do I sort of like start to try to sabotage his life?
Yeah, that would be understandable.
No.
Disappointing.
No. I'm not that bad, that evil.
Like, neurosurgeons are the worst hecklers of all the surgeons, I'm told by my cousin who's a neurosurgeon. Anyway, okay, second question
Long Island neurosurgeon. Don't go to Long Island neurosurgeons. I guess that's my advice.
Just throw all of them under the bus as a group. Okay, second question is, like, what goes through your mind? What do you feel coming off stage, having just flopped that badly?
Well, like I was saying, you build up this. You kind of try to train yourself to love bombing and to sort of value that experience. But there are times where it's undeniably brutal and undeniably painful, and especially in a situation like that where I'm the outsider, I'm the visitor, and I have not established any credibility in this space. It's devastating. Like, it's really hard to get back up and keep going, but I think it's the physical feeling of it that's so hard. Like, it's pain. It feels like physical pain.
It sounds like, I mean, like a breakup almost, like you're getting rejected in the same way as if someone dumped you.
I think there's something to that, yeah. I'll tell you one more quickly, which was a bigger scale, which was after I got onto The Daily Show, I suddenly had so many more opportunities as a comedian, and I'm like Ed Helms from The Daily Show. So my booker manager was like, I got you. You're gonna headline Mohegan Sun, which is a huge casino in Connecticut, like up somewhere. There you go. All right. I get up there, but the thing about once I got on The Daily Show, I stopped doing stand-up because I was working full time. So I had these giant opportunities, but I also lost my chops entirely. And I get up there and I'm doing an hour set, and I have a brutal night. It's this huge performance hall with banquet seating. No one can hear each other laughing. I can barely hear the crowd. There's just no way to establish that sort of comedy connection. And I'm so anxious on stage. It's coming across. It's a terrible night. And also I had to do an hour, which was the same thing as before. I barely had an hour. And all I'm feeling is like I'm just disappointing these folks. It was a terrible night. I had 3 or 4 more nights to go at this booking at the same spot. Mohegan Sun puts a newspaper out under everyone's door, like a little like Mohegan Sun newspaper. And someone had reviewed my show in this newspaper that went under everybody's door in the morning. And like Ed Helms from The Daily Show had a hard night in the comedy room, and just this like, deconstruction of my failure. But now like walking through the casino, I just know like everyone knows like I tanked, and now like anyone who comes is aware that like I'm starting so far behind the starting line. Anyway, lots of stuff like that.
When are those low expectations helpful though?
I think when you feel both of those instances, I didn't feel prepared. But when you feel like you've done the legwork and the homework and the preparation, and you've put in the hours, and no one knows who you are, and you've got killer jokes in the chamber, like ready to fire, that's when that's when it's an advantage to not be known, for sure.
So talk to us about the process of getting there, because I think a lot of people would crash and burn like you did and say, forget it, I'm done. Like, yeah, I get that this could be a growth experience, but like, I'm not confident that I can get good enough at this that it's worth the pain. Where did that confidence come from?
I think so confidence is an interesting way to characterize it. I don't think I had confidence, but I had a sort of, it wasn't confidence. It was just a belief that I was doing the thing that I was like put here to do, weirdly. And so that sort of allowed me to punch through some really difficult times. It's like, this is all I want. And I know like it's gonna beat me up. And again, I could, at my best, I really could rely on the community. Like I always tell people that are like, how do you get into comedy? Like, how do you break into these spaces, or any kind of showbiz thing, which I think to a lot of people who want to be in show business feels insurmountable or terrifying. I always just say like, start by finding your cohort. Surround yourself with people who agree that what you want is awesome. Because otherwise, especially if your aspirations are a little bit out there or unusual, or the thing you want to do is not widely considered to be like a great career move, you're gonna get so much resistance. And it's just friction. It's not even necessarily people telling you you're making a bad choice. It's just people sort of like, it's those little things like, you want to, that's what you want to do? Like, but when you're surrounded by, when I was with my comedian friends, it was like, there was no question we were all sort of doing the right thing. And that is so galvanizing, and such an important way to find support. I don't know,
So it sounds like you're talking about people sort of mildly judging your career path.
Yeah, or just telling you you're an idiot, and that like nobody succeeds at nobody can be a comedian. Like, especially I grew up in Atlanta, Georgia. Nobody knew a comedian. Nobody knew an actor. It was so crazy, and so I kept all of my aspirations totally internal as a kid. And because I knew that I would just get laughed at or eye rolls or kind of like, good luck, buddy. And that stuff is awful.
When did you know that this was what you wanted to do?
Early. 8 or 9 years old.
Wow.
Yeah.
What was it that hooked you?
It was Saturday Night Live, which is I think a lot of comedians answer, but I didn't understand it, but I just loved the energy of it. And I would sneak down, and my buddy Nick and I would watch every episode of Saturday Night Live, quote it to each other. And again, I think we got maybe a third of the jokes, but there was something about that live show with like the audience, and Eddie Murphy was on at the time when I was a kid, and I loved him. He was like everything I wanted to be. He was so spontaneous, he was so present, and I could tell, you know what it was? I looked at him and I was like, he's having fun. He's having so much fun, and I want that fun.
Okay, so this is an interesting contrast with where your career then went. So let me just, I feel like a disclaimer is needed here. So I once made the mistake of doing a cameo on a TV show called Billions. And it was the most boring day of my life.
Oh, yeah.
Like 7.5 hours of retaking a 2.5-minute scene.
Yeah.
And you're on take 23, and you're like, I don't even think even the director can see a difference at this point. Like, we could have shot the whole season in the time you're wasting. You don't have any of the audience energy. You don't have any sense of, like, I'm growing, I'm connecting with other people, I'm producing entertainment. Like, they're gonna see it months later.
Yeah.
How in the world does somebody who got such a rush out of doing stand-up comedy could you ever want to be in a TV show or movie? What is wrong with you, Ed Helms?
All I can say is that I love trying to make something as funny as it can be. And to me, I always want more takes. Like directors, I'm usually asking directors for more takes because I just love to explore and think about is this as funny as it can be? Is there another bit of top spin I can put on this, or a little bit of a side angle? And I'm constantly changing my takes, take to take. It's the novel. I see endless novelty in it.
Wow.
And that is that is such a thrill. And then on a set like The Office, it's never not funny. The writing is so good and the other actors are so good. I think I've been so lucky to work on things that I love most of the time. I have been in situations where it's tedious, for sure. But I try to bring that pursuit of comedic perfection, which is completely unattainable, but that's the fun.
Okay, so this is the difference between a highly skilled professional and an unqualified amateur.
But I also tell people, they're like, oh, I've shot a number of movies in Atlanta, which is where I grew up, and I have all these high school friends can I be in your movie? Can I be in the movie? Can I just be in the background? I want to come sit in the background. I'm like, you don't want that.
Don't do it.
You think you want that? It is torture because of everything you're saying. Unless you care a lot about the movie and care a lot about your performance, being in the background of something, you're gonna wait around forever. You're gonna sit there, take after take, everything you just said.
I just feel like I was on the wrong set after hearing you talk.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about how many of you know Ed primarily from The Office? I'm just curious. Okay, a lot of you. And how many of you know him primarily from the Hangover series? Okay, some of the same people raised their hands. Good to know. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about The Office.
Sure.
What were your biggest lessons from being on the greatest show of its time?
Gosh, lessons.
Now, when Rainn Wilson was here, he did not hesitate on that question.
The biggest lesson was that Rainn Wilson is the worst. The worst. This is a little bit of a cheesy answer, but I was so proud to be given the line. I wish there was some way in the very last episode of the series. I wish there was some way to know you're in the good old days while you're actually in them. And I just got chills saying that because I did know, working on that show, that I was in something so special. And I loved every minute, and I couldn't wait to get to work every day. And I loved everyone that I worked with. and I understood how rare it was, and yet, like years later, it's like I can look back and say, like, I didn't even get it. As much as I thought I got it, it was so much more incredible than I even thought at the time. And that lesson is that you never really know what a good old day is. You know, there is no way to know how good a good old day is, even if you feel good about it. When I think back on, I did one of these conversations just 2 nights ago with Samantha Bee, who I was on The Daily Show with, and who I adore, and sitting there talking with Sam backstage beforehand, and just cracking each other up, I was suddenly flooded with memories of The Daily Show that I hadn't remembered in so long. And those memories were sitting around in the office just bullshitting. And those are the good old days. Like, it's like the lesson is to just like love the mundane if you're in a good place, like cherish the mundane, because that's like that's what we'll feel. That's where nostalgia is built. It's not built in the big moments. It's built in the small moments.
I think that's I think when people talk about this, it sounds like a bug, but I actually think it's a feature at some level. I was reading some research on this recently about how mindfulness is the opposite of flow.
Interesting.
Where when you're in a mindful state, you're fully kind of aware of the situation.
Yes.
And when you're in a flow state, you're so deeply absorbed that you're not attuned to the fact that you're enjoying it.
Yeah.
And I think by definition, right, if you start to become aware, you start to like evaluate and analyze, and you lose the moment.
Yeah.
Maybe that's not a bad thing.
No, I think that's a beautiful thing. And they both have tremendous value.
Okay, so how did you get the part? Because when you joined, The Office was already a hit.
Yeah.
Like, what was it that landed it for you?
I can't know exactly what was in the mind of Greg Daniels, but I had been on The Daily Show for 4.5 years at that point, and I was starting to really look around at other opportunities. I really wanted to act as opposed to this Daily Show role, which was very one note, kind of like, you know, these sort of jerky correspondent roles, which I also loved, but I just thought, I got to branch out. So I was starting to kind of put feelers out, and I worked on this little movie about a short film that my friend directed about a zombie who was trying to get his social life going, and trying to enter the dating pool. And so you can imagine the trials and tribulations of a zombie just trying to like go on blind dates. And we really committed to the makeup, like heavy zombie makeup. So it's like a guy, you know, who he stinks. His flesh is rotting, and he's hideous because skin is falling off, and no one will like really give him the time of day. And it's a really poignant little short film, but we shot it as a little sort of a mockumentary, very much inspired by things like The Office or Spinal Tap or all these great sort of mockumentaries. And it was a 10-minute film, lots of those kind of talking head shots of me like lamenting the difficulty of in full zombie makeup. It was very funny because it was so sad. And I think...
Can you give us an example?
Well, yeah, like there was a great... There's like me sitting in a cafe waiting for my blind date to show up, and the camera clocks her entering the cafe and seeing me, and then just like being horrified and running away. And I don't see that, and I'm sitting there waiting, and it's sad. It's like moving. It's a little, but it's so silly. Like it's just so ridiculous to like treat a zombie as this like, you know, poignant guy struggling through death, not life, death.
Never felt so much zombie empathy before.
Yeah, exactly. Which was the point. Anyway, it was a fun, creative thing. It was my friend's idea, and I just was like, had fun doing it. But that got into Greg's hands, and that was very much, again, like it was a office tone, and so I think he was like, Ed gets this. Like Ed gets what we're doing here.
Yep.
And so I was invited to just sit down and have a general meeting with Greg Daniels. And when you have general meetings in Hollywood, it's like, you never know. 9 times out of 10, it's just like some agent was like, yeah, let's get them together. Like, I owe him a favor. Like, I really want him to, I owe Ed a favor. Like, let's get him a meeting that he thinks is cool. So like, or somebody's friend of a friend, like you just never know. It's very rarely like a meaningful meeting. There's so many general meetings in Hollywood. So I didn't know what this would be, but I get to the writers' offices of The Office, and I'm thrilled to be there. I'm super excited. I'm already a big fan of the show, and I knew Steve from our Daily Show days. I already knew Steve, and I was so proud of him for crushing it. And I get up there, and Greg and Paul Lieberstein, who was sort
Toby.
of like who plays Toby and was one of the top lieutenant writers, sit me down in the office, and they're like, we have this idea for this character. Connecticut yacht club kid, kind of douchey, probably wears pants with sailboats on them, and I was like, I get, and he's in an a cappella group, and he's like, it just clicked. I got it. I got this character instantly, and we just are riffing and like cracking each other up, and it was really, really fun. And then they're like, all right, well, we'll let you know. We don't know if we're gonna do that storyline or not, but we're just something we've been kicking around. We'll let you know. So I go back to the Daily Show, and I kind of forget about it, and then I get the call, and the call was, we're gonna do this. We're going to try this thing where Jim goes to Stanford. We're terrified it's not going to work, so we're going to hire you for 2 episodes. The first episode, it's like really humming, and they're like, okay, then we're going to make this 8 episodes. We're going to make the whole Stanford thing an 8-episode thing. There's about 24 episodes in a season, so that was like a good chunk, a third of a season. That's about as much as we'll commit to Stanford. And I'm like, that's amazing, but I still am like, I'm only on The Office for 8 episodes. And the Daily Show was like, you can go do it, but we're gonna have to hire someone because that's a long time to be gone, and it may be hard to bring you back. And I was like, well, that's a kind of a dick move. Been on the show for 4.5 years, and I was really at loggerheads with one of the EPs there. I did not like him at all, and this was sort of evidence. And I don't even think Jon Stewart was aware of these like horrible conversations. And so I was like, you know what? That's all I needed to hear. I'm going to just take the plunge on these 8 episodes, and I did. And then at about 6 episodes in, they were like, "Can you stick around?" And I was like, "Yes." And yeah.
I love that it wasn't your full-time job at the Daily Show, but rather this little 10-minute side project that you did that got you discovered.
That contributed. I don't know how big a role that played. I know Greg saw it, but that's sort of my working understanding of the process. But yeah,
it's a really good reminder though to keep creating things.
Yes, yeah, and I was loving The Office, and it was such a thrill. I mean, my friend Nick brought this idea to me, but I sort of got it because of the Office vibe that I was already into.
Okay, so was there a big snafu on The Office?
So many snafus. Gosh. Let me think of oh boy. I mean, I'll share something that's a little bit might be a little unusual. I don't think this is necessarily a snafu in the grand sense, but it was just sort of a snafu of my experience, which was that I hit a couple of speed bumps in the last couple of seasons where I didn't, for so long, I thought the writers were like just crushing it and everything. I loved the feedback loop of like giving Andy certain traits that the writers would pick up on. The writers would also give Andy certain traits. And this, all the characters, we all sort of had this fun feedback loop with the writing staff. Somewhere in those last couple of seasons, I started to hit a couple of speed bumps where I was like, I don't understand this. I don't understand the behavior that you're writing for Andy. And I don't understand the choices Andy's making. And I really struggled to kind of like push through that. And I think I just relied on sort of the commitment to professionalism and the commitment to like trusting the process and trusting, and also sort of staying in your lane, the importance of like staying and like knowing your role. We were all very passionate about our characters and the storylines and arcs of our characters, and we were so invested in them. So it was hard, but I think at the end of the day, I just like soldiered through, and no regrets, like no, I hold no grudges. There's no, but it was a good lesson in sort of like it isn't always exactly what you want. Like even something great you just have to push through.
I do remember an arc where Andy got weird.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm like, yeah, okay, you felt that too. Good. Okay, so let's talk about some snafus that you've been fascinated by and that did not embarrass you or affect your life or career in any way. What's your favorite snafu from the book?
They're all my babies. It's very, very hard to choose. I think, well, you know what? There's one that's really, there's one that stands out because it is so crazy, and that is in the 1950s, the Cold War was getting, very intense, and the United States really wanted to flex nuclear muscle, and there was very much an arms race with nuclear development happening, and so someone hatched the idea, let's shoot the moon with a nuclear missile. And the logic was, everyone can see the moon. So if we hit it with a nuclear missile, it'll just be this like, yeah, check this out, Soviet Union. You can't do this. Like, and look what we did to the moon. We can do that to you too. And a lot of time and money and resources went into this. Carl Sagan worked on this. And he loves planets, right? He's supposed to love planets, I thought. Well, no, but he was right out of grad school. This is a true story. He was very young, and he worked on this. The only reason this whole thing was uncovered is because one of Carl Sagan's biographers found a fellowship application that he had filled out at the time, and he had put this project on the fellowship application. And they were like, okay, I'm going to table my Carl Sagan research and go into this for a minute. And it was explored and researched at length. They eventually realized that this is a terrible idea because any miscalculation or malfunction of the rocket could very easily miss the moon, be slingshotted around the gravitational field of the moon, and just come right back to Earth, and just hit somebody, anybody. And they decided not to do it. Thank God. Thank God. That's like Wile E.
Can't
Coyote.
believe that happened.
Yes, it's crazy. That's one I love just because of the sheer audacity and insanity of it all. There are others that I love for different reasons. How many people? How familiar are you with Jimmy Carter's legacy? The president, he just passed away at over 100 recently. Does anyone? You guys don't know. Probably don't know that much, but
we have some people who can probably reference peanut farming and
yes,
voting.
Yes,
right?
Jimmy Carter was a man of a slight build and had a little bit of a Don Knotts vibe to him, who was also, I'm so old. You're college kids, never mind. But he had a kind of a dorky reputation, Jimmy Carter. And he's a president who I love because I grew up in a Southern Democrat household, and he is the sort of like icon of Southern Democrats. And I think he stood for a lot of very important and meaningful things, and he did some very meaningful things, and had an amazing post-presidency. But he's often considered and thought of as a wimp, just kind of a wimp. Even as somebody who did some great things, kind of a wimpy guy. And there was a snafu also in the 1950s. Nuclear power was very young, nuclear plants, and there was one in Deep River, Ontario, which is just upriver from Ottawa. And it was a research nuclear reactor. And they had a meltdown. It was the first time a nuclear reactor had melted down in human history. It was terrifying. The reactor starts to melt down. But full Homer Simpson comedy of errors leads to the meltdown. I'll skip that for now. But they called the US military. They're like, we're freaking out. This is terrible. Can anyone help us? Jimmy Carter was 25 years old, worked on nuclear subs at the time, and was an expert on nuclear reactors and had significant training and leadership. He was dispatched to the Chalk River reactor, and it's incredible. They built a replica of the reactor on a tennis court nearby, so that they could rehearse dismantling the reactor. And the reason they had to rehearse it so much is because it was so radioactive that they could only be exposed to it for 90 seconds at a time. So they had to create this tag team process of dismantling this complex piece of machinery. And so Jimmy Carter led this effort where they rehearsed and rehearsed and rehearsed dismantling this thing. Then they rebuilt it, the replica, and then they started to send the men in this sort of tag team, almost like a pit crew on a NASCAR, and they would just unscrew bolts and take pieces out, 90 seconds at a time, and then run out. And they had these cheap hazmat suits, which at the time were basically like medical scrubs. I mean, there just was no, nuclear technology was so new and radioactivity was so little understood, and Jimmy Carter led this effort while they're dismantling the live reactor. They're doing the same thing simultaneously on the replica so that they can keep track of what's happening and keep planning and adjusting. And it's incredibly successful. They halt the meltdown in process. It's still a catastrophe. There's still a million or so gallons of radioactive water flooded the basement of this facility, but it was fixable. Like, they could handle the fallout. The reactor was fixed, and it kept working for years after that. This was such a heroic act. Like, the snafu is the meltdown. A lot of the snafus in this actually do have some surprising heroes in them, and I love this one for that reason.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so Jimmy Carter is not a wimp.
Not a wimp.
According to you.
According to me, not a wimp. Take that to the bank.
I'm curious about the bigger lessons that you've learned from 3 seasons of the podcast, from writing the book, about how to prevent a snafu or how to clean one up. I think, for me, the most obvious lesson is, so often these things happen because groups polarize and then fall victim to groupthink, and
yes.
They get overconfident and they don't have enough dissent and they don't question themselves, and they end up on a path that they shouldn't be on.
Absolutely.
Surely there's more to them than that. What else have you found to be common patterns?
Hubris, but really that's the biggest one. What you just said, the enclosed bubble of groupthink, and also I think, especially when you get back into the 50s and 60s, there are clearly no women involved in some of these decisions, and that of course contributes to a very siloed set of values and opinions, and I think.
Are you suggesting that women are smarter than men, Ed?
No, I'm stating that as a fact. My wife has made that very clear to me for quite a while, and proven it many times. But yeah, also the sort of power of fear, both as a motivator and as a motivator to action and a motivator to often terrible judgment. Sometimes amazing judgment. The story of season 2 of the podcast, which, again, I love them all, but I think season 2 of the podcast is my favorite. It's funny, but it's very poignant and moving. It's the story of, in 1971, in 1971 in Philadelphia. This is great. This is a local story. Media, Pennsylvania. Do you know where that is? Okay, Media.
I used to live there.
Did you really?
Yeah.
Do you know this story?
No.
Oh.
I mean, not yet.
Oh, you have. Okay, you will love this episode. So, or that season, season 2. So, Philadelphia in the late 60s, 70s, hotbed of activism. I don't think we have that association with Philadelphia anymore, but in the 60s and 70s, so much political activity was just humming here. And it really was an exciting place if you were passionate about civil rights, anti-war activism, the Vietnam War, and it was an exciting place. It was also a very dangerous place because the FBI, still under the horrific stewardship of J. Edgar Hoover, was harassing people, totally illegally surveilling people, basically just stomping on the civil liberties of anyone they didn't like. And they didn't like people with long hair. They didn't like people who didn't like the Vietnam War. They didn't like people of color and anyone who wanted to stand up for any of those people. And so the activist community in Philadelphia was getting a lot of abuse from the FBI, and they had nowhere to turn. Where do you turn when law enforcement it's like, you can't go to the FBI. So a tiny group of these activists, again, this is the fear, they're motivated by a fear and rage, I think, like kind of a belief that this is just a gross injustice that's happening. There was an FBI office in Media, Pennsylvania. They staged a heist, and they planned for months this elaborate heist. They broke into the FBI office. They stole all the files. At the time, this is pre-hard drive, so every field office of the FBI had basically every FBI file. They steal them. They read them, and they find all this evidence of illegal activity. They start to leak these files to Congress people, reporters. Everyone chickens out. Most of them return the files to the FBI. One reporter, a very brave young reporter at the Washington Post by the name of Betty Metzger, starts to publish them. And the Washington Post brass, by the way, to their credit. This is pre-Watergate. This is pre-Pentagon Papers. They decide, we're going to publish this stuff. It leads to an epic takedown of J. Edgar Hoover. He, at the time, was still a national hero. He winds up dying very soon after this, but it demolishes his reputation. It leads to massive congressional investigation. The church hearings, which were led by a very progressive Democrat from Idaho, which is not a thing anymore, but Frank Church was this amazing senator from Idaho who led this investigation into the FBI. And it is the church hearings themselves that are the only reason we now have congressional oversight over the FBI, the NSA, the CIA, and all of the intelligence agencies. Massive reform happened. We are now in a moment of backtracking, and we're going backwards. It's a scary moment. But that is a story of like incredible heroism. These people had families. They put themselves at unbelievable personal risk. And I just love that story for the courage to do what's right. And And I think it's an amazing example for this moment that we're in right now. And then we made that podcast like 2 years ago when there was no indication that it would be so prescient. But it has emerged, I think, certainly in my mind, as something instructive, reflective, and weirdly recursive on this moment.
Love it. We could use a little more of it right now.
Yeah.
Okay, we have some more audience questions that we haven't covered yet. Are you ready for some of them?
Heck yeah.
Okay, we'll do some of these lightning style rapid fire. Will there ever be an Office remake, and will you be there?
I don't think there'll ever be an Office remake, but there is the Office
spin-off,
team,
right?
Yeah, there's a new show called The Paper, and the only character that I know is going to appear is Oscar. I don't know if he's in it or in the cast or he has a cameo, but it's sort of like, I don't know. That's in the works.
All right, well, we expect to see you there at a dying newspaper company.
Okay, good.
If Andy Bernard had a spin-off show, what would it be called, and what would he be doing now?
It'd be called Andy Time, and he would be the dean of admissions at Cornell. Or no, he would not be the dean of admissions. He would be like a staffer in the admissions office.
Aspiring to one day.
Aspiring dean, yeah.
That actually is connected to another question that came up, which is, what do you think is better at Cornell than Penn? You don't have to answer that one.
Well, Cornell invited me to be their commencement speaker. Penn has so far failed miserably in that.
Take that, Elizabeth Banks. All right. Who do you identify with more, Andy Bernard or Stuart Price?
Andy, for sure. Yeah. I mean, they're both departures from me, but there's a lot of me in both. But I think Andy is a guy with very few tools to deal with the feelings that I have. Like I relate to some of the thoughts and feelings and internal battles that Andy has, but I like to think I have a little bit better set of tools and I have a higher emotional intelligence than Andy. But I relate to some of his expressions of insecurity for sure.
Wow, what's your favorite Office episode?
This will probably surprise no one, but Dinner Party it was some of the hardest laughs I've ever had was shooting that episode.
Favorite scene?
Favorite moment, because I don't think of it in scenes, but my favorite moment is when Steve is showing us how his flat screen TV is adjustable. And it moves 2 inches. And he's so proud of that. And we must have done 500 takes of that because none of us could get through it. It just was so dumb and so funny.
Love it. Okay, did you actually do a cappella in college?
Yes, I was in the Oberlin Obertones for 2 semesters, and I learned something very valuable. And I don't know, are there a cappella singers here? Anyone? No, okay. I learned a lesson which I think is a sort of fundamental truth of the universe, which is that a cappella music is unbelievably fun to do and very painful to endure or watch or consume.
Was there a moment in your career when you thought, yep, I've made it, or has that never really happened?
I don't know. There are definitely moments of celebration, that like in a production like The Office or the Hangover movies, like there are these kind of built-in moments of celebration. You have premieres, you have these kind of big events that feel kind of like milestones. And I think there are some heady moments during some of those times where you feel like this is incredible. I feel, but it's very fleeting. And in show business, like no one's stock is really permanent in any way. So I think, I don't know, there's kind of this beautiful constant pursuit.
Okay, this one I thought was highly amusing. The question is, do you have it written into your acting contracts that you have to sing at least once per performance?
No, it's not in any of my contracts, and I just force it in there. And it's not welcome most of the time. And I get a lot of pushback, and I don't give a I'm gonna sing, and you can use it or not. I have a very firm belief, because this started on The Daily Show. I just started singing in interviews. Like, I'd be interviewing somebody, and I'd start singing, and I just think like loud, passionate singing at inappropriate times is so funny. Like, I will stand by that. I will die on that hill. That is like, and a lot of people disagree. A lot of people disagree. But I love it.
I noticed you haven't climbed that hill at all today.
You're right. I haven't. You're right. But this is if we're shooting a movie.
Oh, well, there was a request. Can you sing the Doug song?
If there were a piano here, I would. But
we came unprepared. Okay, here's another one I liked. What's been the most rewarding acting experience you've had?
I would say The Office, no question. So many years, such a just deep, rich, shared experience with incredible people.
Can't argue with that. Okay, I liked this one quite a bit too. I liked most of these questions. This was a really good set of questions. How do you deal with people expecting you to be funny all the time?
Wait, so I am funny all the time. I just be funny all the time. No, different moments have different expectations, and I try to surround myself with people who know me and appreciate. I mean, like, in terms of like intimate, like my friends and family, they know that I can be a really serious, boring dude, and that's okay.
How do you think about what success means at this point in your career?
This is super cheesy, but I think of it now as I have kids, and I think of it as like, what kind of role model am I being in what, like now as I analyze my acting choices or my career choices or the things that I put my time and energy into, it's about like, how is this something that I can be proud of as a parent, like when my kids can be proud of and look at as they get older, see me putting my heart into things that that have value. And by the way, value is measured in 1,000 different ways, but it's something, I don't know, it's like, it in your gut if it's worthwhile, and all the markers of success, the money or the adulation, and certainly in show business, fame is a big sort of metric. That they really fall apart. They start to lose meaning at a certain point, because they don't make you a better dad. They don't make you a better brother or family member or friend. And those are the things that matter.
Why is that cheesy?
Because because it's about feelings. and I was raised in the South, and we don't talk about feelings.
Okay, so Ed, we've got a lot of people here who I think are afraid to fail. We've been talking this whole conversation about the value of failure. What would your advice be about how to confront the next snafu that we all face?
Well, I think going back to what I was talking about earlier about finding kind of your people, or finding the people that will think what you're doing is awesome, no matter what whether you're succeeding or failing in the moment. Part of that is how are you reacting to your peers' failures? What culture are you helping to build around you? So you're not necessarily, it's not necessarily like how do I handle my own failures? It's like what sort of soup am I swimming in and contributing to? Like, is this a yummy vegetable soup and I'm like a delicious carrot, or am I just like a gross cockroach that got thrown into this soup? And so I don't know. I think of like an approach to failure as like really a mindset of a community or a cohort, and part of that is like choosing the people you're around, choosing the people that you are becoming close with, and because the right people, the right community, the right sort of vibe failure just won't be so catastrophic. It won't feel so catastrophic.
Is there a surprising takeaway that you've picked up when it comes to then bouncing back from your snafus?
Calluses are good. I mean, it's so hard. And when you're in a moment of failure, it's so hard to see beyond. It's so hard to like see out of the hole sometimes. And then it's like, that's where like habits become so important, and like committing to, like in my case, so many auditions are just like, you're getting rejected so much, so frequently, with so much regularity, that you literally have to rely on the habit of like attending auditions, because the auditions themselves are so humiliating, and it's such a pattern of beatdown and failure.
Even now?
No. Now, I'm sorry, early on, starting out, coming up. Now, failure, yes, it's habits. I have a weird one. A lot of people, like, a lot of people are, I think, a lot of self-help and pop psychology talks about the power of affirmations, right? Like saying nice things to yourself in the mirror and so forth. And I sort of was like, come on, is that really a thing? This is crazy. I've never told anybody this. I made a video of myself on my phone, giving myself a pep talk, and just being like, and I have a couple of them for different situations, like specific moments of difficulty. And I'll go to those, and I'll some of them are for like if I feel like I failed in some social context, some of them are in a more professional context. And I swear it helps. Like seeing myself, tell myself that, you know what, you're overthinking this, or like, you're falling. You're in a pattern, and there's a way out, and you have to remember this and this and this. Like, put some time into that little script, and I did. I wrote this. I consulted ChatGPT, and I got a little script, and I swear it helps a lot. Seeing myself like myself is pretty damn good.
Wow,
it's a pretty nice thing.
So this is I've never heard of this application before, but this is, psychologists would call that self-distancing, right? To hear from a version of you that isn't caught up in the current failure.
Yes, that's exactly what it is.
I've never seen someone record a video of themselves giving the pep talk.
To myself, yeah.
That's amazing. So what's your favorite one? What does it say?
It basically starts out like, all right, Ed, cue the cheesy background music. Here we go. And I put some like inspirational music behind it. It's like, and then it's just sort of like the basic kind of I think, as a person in show business with a high profile, I'm constantly putting myself out there, and I'm constantly exposing myself to judgment. And sometimes that's hard. Sometimes I'll ruminate afterward, after a moment, after an interview or an appearance of some sort, and be like, I can't believe I said that. I can't. We all do that. That's so normal. And I'm there for me. Like, in my phone, I'm right there. And I can literally check it in those times. I also will sometimes watch it going into a thing, before the thing, where it's like, hey, you belong. You're where you're supposed to be.
That's
and
amazing.
It's like, they're short, and they're, and I kind of, when I see myself being like a good version of myself, even if it's like, I think that in itself is reassuring. I'm seeing myself on screen. It's so weird because when you think about like like throughout human history, this was not available. This was not a thing. This is not a thing that anyone has had access to throughout the development of humanity. And maybe this is the hack, guys. Maybe this is the life hack that gets us all over the hump. No, I'm kidding, but I like it. I think it's a fun little trick.
I like
You're
it
basically
too.
tricking yourself, but sometimes that's what you need.
Or you're not tricking yourself, and you're getting the version of yourself that's currently being tricked by wallowing in your despair out of that.
Yes,
situation.
I like that take. That's exactly right.
Well, I would record one of these myself, but I can't act, so I don't know how to record it.
Just be affectionate to yourself.
Too many feelings, but I appreciate the encouragement. So just by a little applause, how many of you are going to record your own pep talks tonight?
Oh, wow. All right, we're starting something here. This is a revolution.
This could be a movie.
I have literally told no one that besides my therapist. And my therapist was like, I'm going to do that. So it's, I like it, and I encourage you to do it.
Well, you came to the right place to debut it. There are a lot of people who need a pep talk right now. And
All right.
also a laugh. And Ed, we're so grateful that you were willing to come and provide both of those things to us.
Aw.
Hey, thank you.
Thanks so much for having me. Woo. How about this guy? Thank you, Adam.
Thank
Truly.
you.
Yeah, this was great.